You may say, well, geez, it seems like a lot of these things have to do with being overweight. If you lose control of your weight, if you have excess body fat, you can get a lot of these problems, right? Okay, well, what causes the excess body fat? It's often the insulin resistance. Okay. And in fact, did you know that as you become more and more insulin resistant, even the places in your body where the fat is stored, it changes. As you become more insulin resistant, you start to put on more of this visceral fat, this belly fat, which is the hard, firm fat that causes a bit of a belly, a protruding belly, right? Insulin resistance is the root cause of things like fatty liver. And this is our topic for today. We're going to be talking a lot about fatty liver, and we're going to be learning from an absolute expert on the subject. Do you struggle with blood sugar control? Did you know that pre-diabetes, or especially type 2 diabetes, that's like double insulin resistance, okay? That is insulin resistance squared. Migraine headaches, Alzheimer's, depression, all can be related to the insulin resistance. Heart disease is the number one killer in the world. There's 47 million people on cholesterol lowering medication. There's 60 million in this country that are on blood pressure lowering medication. PCOS for women, now the number one cause of infertility among women. And the bad guy, the leaky pipe, the thing that must be addressed is insulin resistance. And here is what we're finding is that when we address the insulin resistance, a lot of these other problems, in many cases, will disappear. You just heard that from Kim Jackson, and you're going to hear it from many, many more people tonight. So, how do you solve for insulin resistance? How can you fix this? How can you make it go away? How can you address it? And, before we finish the call, we'll explain the protocol that we follow. This is something I've been following for about 3 years now. It has been effortless. I don't feel like I'm on any kind of a diet. And I have literally taken control of my health pretty effortlessly. And so we want to teach you how to do that. Now, before I talk too much, which I'm very capable of doing, I want to bring our special guest into tonight's call. Every week on these calls, we bring in people who are excellent educators. So on these calls, you're going to get lots of wonderful free education from incredible experts, okay? And tonight, our expert is Shana Hussin, a registered dietitian. Now, I was fanboying over Shana on Instagram probably like 2 years ago. I think the very first message I sent to Shana, she probably didn't read it or reply because I was just a little fish and she's a bigger fish. But she's so sweet. I mean, that sounds like she ignored me, but no, I mean, I was fanboying is what I'm trying to say about Shana because she is just such an excellent, excellent teacher. So Shana is a registered dietitian. Shana is one of the best in the world that I have seen on just teaching people in terms they can understand about really complex problems. And tonight she's going to be talking about insulin resistance and fatty liver. So Shana, I'll let you share your screen and I'll go on mute while you talk.
Thank you so much. That was such a fantastic introduction. And I have to defend myself a little bit. So Trent did contact me a few years ago, but it was during a really crazy time where my mom, I'm going to be talking about my mom here in just a minute here, but I'm having trouble getting up my my screen here. Let me see. For some reason, I am not able to get to my slides here.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. There we go.
Got your Zoom.
Okay, we got it.
We got you. Yep.
Okay, how is this looking? Are you still able to see me okay?
It's awesome. It's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, but like I was saying, I just have to share this really quick. So Trent did contact me a couple years ago, but I looked back at the date and it was literally the day after my mom went into hospice. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit here, but I wasn't ignoring you completely. And I did go back like 2 years later and I saw that message. So flattered that you contacted me and you thought of me and that you're bringing me on today. But fatty liver is really near and dear to me. And I've learned more and more about this topic over the last couple of years. I've been talking about insulin resistance and reversing insulin resistance for a long time. And I've been specializing in that because just like Trent said, I have realized that it is the root cause of most chronic disease. And I will tell you, I've been a dietitian for 25 years and I struggled with insulin resistance myself because I was following all of the guidelines that set us up to have insulin resistance and have blood sugar issues and get metabolically ill. But my mom died in February of 2024. I wish I had the protocol that Trent will talk more about in a couple of minutes. But her story is like many others. So by the time she told me she was struggling with fatty liver, it was advanced. It was advanced to scarring, and she had had elevated liver enzymes for years to decades. We went back into her medical chart, and it had been at least 12 years that she'd had elevated liver enzymes. So she had been, at this point, she was sent to a hepatologist, a liver specialist, because she had been told to just watch it for years. And this is so frustrating. What I have found is that the conventional system really has no good way to treat fatty liver. And so they just tell you to watch it because they don't know what else to say. Watching was absolutely not enough. By the time I knew about it, it had advanced to fibrosis and scarring. I'll talk about the stages in just a minute here. And then pretty quickly after I knew that she was struggling with her liver, she was diagnosed with pancreatic and liver cancer, which are complications of long-term fatty liver. I do want to mention too that she rarely drank. When I started as a dietitian 25 years ago, I don't want to say the only, but the vast majority of fatty liver cases were due to alcoholism. We just don't see that anymore. In fact, it's kind of the minority, and we'll see why in just a few minutes. But she drank maybe 3-5 drinks in an entire year. She was not a drinker at all. So her fatty liver was stemming from other metabolic issues, lifestyle issues. She struggled with her weight for her entire life. She had, the belly fat, a lot of the symptoms that we'll go through here. But because it's rare to actually have fatty liver develop from alcoholism, I'm not saying that it doesn't, but the vast majority of cases are now classified as a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this is just basically fat accumulation in the liver, and alcohol is not always a factor. So the crazy thing about fatty liver, and again, this has changed dramatically just in the 25 years that I've been in practice, but an estimated 1 in 3 adults may have fatty liver. If you yourself are struggling with fatty liver, put an FL in the chat. But the thing is, we probably know, like if I asked you to put an FL in the chat, if you know somebody with fatty liver disease, you'd probably be like, I don't think so. But the reality is you do. I assure you, there's somebody in your life or in your family who's struggling with fatty liver. They just don't know it because they have severe insulin resistance. The other very alarming thing about fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, it is on the rise in children. It's a scary thing. Again, when I started practicing, I did not see this as a problem in children. We'll look at the factors of why that is, but it's definitely on the rise in children. And it's kind of a silent condition. It's one of those things where there's symptoms there, but because you don't really get pain, like you don't get pain in the liver, and some of these symptoms can show up when the disease state's already pretty advanced, it can go undetected for a really long time. Now, Trent told us how insulin resistance is basically the base root cause of just about every chronic disease or issue. So the problem with the conventional system is they like to put you in different boxes, right? They say like, oh, you have cardiac disease, go see a cardiologist. You have diabetes, go see an endocrinologist. You have fatty liver disease, go see a hepatologist. All of these specialists, but it's really if you can fix this one root problem that I will say I have a lot of friends in the conventional system. I'm not here to poo-poo them, but they just don't have a good treatment for lifestyle diseases, and insulin resistance is a lifestyle disease. So when you have fatty liver disease and any of the diseases stemming from insulin resistance, you're oftentimes struggling with fatigue and brain fog, the belly fat that goes around the middle, sugar cravings, irritability, bloating. We talked about the skin tags. You probably know somebody. Those are stemming from insulin resistance. Polycystic ovarian disease, which leads to infertility. High triglycerides, I'll talk about the labs in just a minute here, and elevated liver enzymes. And then we see a telltale sign of insulin resistance and fatty liver disease in your lipid panel is the climbing of LDL cholesterol and the falling of HDL cholesterol and the climbing of triglycerides. Those are telltale signs. Poor sleep, mood swings, all of these things stand back to insulin resistance, and you struggle with these things with fatty liver disease. So like I said, when I put out content, I've been putting out content for insulin resistance for a long time. I also have a podcast called Optimal Metabolism. I get so much feedback and questions and comments when I put out content about fatty liver, because I think people are just so confused about it. Like, how did I get this? Like, why did this develop? I had no idea my liver was fatty. What is this? Where did this come from? I've eaten a low fat diet my whole life. How do I get fatty liver? Those are the questions that I hear. And a lot of times you have these elevated labs that I've talked about, but there is no solution for it. So the liver doesn't hurt. The doctors often ignore it, like they did with my mom, like, oh, just watch those elevated liver enzymes. So I want to draw your attention to ALT and AST. These are liver enzymes. They have long, complicated names. But oftentimes you might get flagged as, maybe having some fatty liver issues if ALT and AST are elevated, but oftentimes they're not. In my mom's case, they were elevated for years and nothing was done about it. But sometimes they're not elevated, or things have advanced and progressed a lot before these enzymes start to get elevated. What happens when the liver gets fatty is it just starts to spill enzymes and not function correctly. So that's why you get the elevated enzymes. The conventional advice, if you do get a fatty liver diagnosis, it's hard to get a definitive diagnosis. It's just like, go lose weight, watch your diet, don't eat a lot of fat, don't eat eggs, don't eat bacon. Like, this is terrible advice. And if we could lose weight and we're eating clean and we're still struggling with these things, there's just not a great solution. But we have solutions, and I will explain what those are. There's not a pharmaceutical to treat fatty liver directly, and there's not great pharmaceuticals to treat insulin resistance directly, because it's a lifestyle disease and it's treated with lifestyle. And we'll talk about some really great products and nutraceuticals that help to treat this as well. The root cause is going back to high insulin, not just calories or fat intake, not just alcohol. And so people, like I said, I've eaten a low fat diet. I did this myself. I watched my fat intake. I ate from the moment I got up. I was eating snacks. I was eating every couple hours like I was told to do. And I developed insulin resistance myself. I have since reversed it. But following those traditional guidelines and living in the environment that we live in now, it's really, really easy to develop these chronic diseases and develop fatty liver. So how does it develop? How do you even get high insulin? What does that even mean? So insulin resistance is when you have high levels of insulin. And to keep, in really simple terms, insulin pushes energy into the cell. So every time you eat, every time you snack, every time you raise your blood sugar, that glucose has to go somewhere. It can't just sit in the bloodstream. That's very detrimental to the body. So the insulin, like a key fob, pushes that energy into the cell. Well, when you have high insulin levels day after day, month after month, year after year, your cells just grow resistant. There's too much energy in the cell. They grow resistant. They're not functioning properly. You could have 80 extra pounds of body fat and your cells are just like, nope, I have too much energy. I'm not letting more in. So insulin stays high. And what this does is turns off fat burning. basically. The fat burning mechanism is turned off because your body, it's a protective mechanism. Your body's trying to protect you. Your body's trying to protect you so that you burn that extra glucose and you burn that extra energy rather than, that's why you're not burning fat, because it wants you to burn that extra glucose. So the liver starts to store up this extra glucose. So you have too much energy coming in, right? You're eating too often. You're eating all your healthy whole grains. You're eating the processed foods that are in the store, or you're eating at night. You know, you're like this little family here eating your bowl of popcorn while you're watching a movie. And all of a sudden, you just have too much energy stored up. And you can only store so much glycogen, which is the storage form of glucose. So that glucose gets high, you can store a finite amount, but after a while, your body's like, I can't store any more glucose, but I have all this sugar in my bloodstream. I don't know what to do with it. That's where the liver decides what to do with almost every macronutrient. It's an amazing organ. It'll decide, I have to convert this glucose to fat because I can't have these high levels of glucose. And so that's where the fat starts to burn up, and the body will pack fat all around the organs and the muscle tissue. It's the safest place to put toxins and to put extra glucose. So you start to get the buildup of fat around your liver, around your organs. That's why you get the belly fat, the visceral fat that is really unsafe for the body. And all of a sudden, your liver is taxed, you're getting inflammation, it's starting to spill enzymes, it's starting to have high triglycerides, because triglycerides are basically just fats in the bloodstream. And so your liver is just spilling all this stuff. And really, it's just an energy, too much energy in the bloodstream. So we just do the opposite to clear out the liver. It's really pretty simple when you understand the mechanism behind it. I do want to just really quickly touch on circadian disruption and blue light, because it's another environmental thing that is really coming into play, especially with children, like I mentioned. So circadian disruption, like if you, like right now, I'm under lights. Normally I have my like dark glasses on right now, and I'm like settling in for the night. But if we have a lot of bright lights and blue lights and screens and your phone screens, computers, video games going at night, that stimulates cortisol. And I don't have time to get really far into this, but I want you to know that cortisol will spill glucose and cause elevation of glucose, even in the absence of eating. So if you are circadian disrupted and you're getting a lot of bright lights when it's dark outside, that can elevate glucose as well. And that's just feeding the whole insulin resistance problem. The other thing is melatonin, which is secreted in the absence of light and darkness to help us to rest and repair and settle down. When that is in low amounts, our digestion starts to go wonky. We don't repair. Our liver isn't working as well. And we're just not detoxifying. We're not resetting at night like we should. So that does play a role. The other thing that I want to make sure I mention, because I can't talk about fatty liver without mentioning fructose. So I don't want you to get the picture that all fructose is bad, but fructose is a type of sugar that doesn't behave like glucose. So I've talked a lot about glucose, but fructose is shunted directly to the liver. It's dealt with by the body very differently than glucose. So it's shunted directly to the liver, and the liver has to deal with it. And so if fructose is in fruit and it's in a natural form and it's got fiber wrapped around it, but really humans weren't meant to eat even a lot of fruit. Like there's just certain fruit that's in your environment at certain times. And, eating a piece of fruit here and there is no big deal to the liver. It can actually be helpful. But when we're drinking soda and juice and we're eating all of these foods and snacks with high fructose corn syrup, that's a whole nother issue. So fructose can be tough on the liver, and even drinking 1 or 2 sugary drinks a day, whether it's juice or soda or an energy drink, that can be that can be really tough on the liver. So that's a major culprit with why we're seeing this huge increase in fatty liver in kids, is because high fructose corn syrup is in so many foods and beverages, that we want to be mindful about that as well. So the real culprit for fatty liver is insulin resistance. So we can reverse that. We can reverse fatty liver. So I talked about insulin resistance is basically the fat storage hormone. It's elevated when you eat all the time and when you eat highly processed foods and high carbohydrate foods. Elevated insulin leads to fat converted and stored in the liver and around the organs. One other thing I want to point out is that you can have normal blood sugar levels for a very long time and still have elevated insulin. This was me. You can have your fasting insulin tested and see if it's elevated. When I finally figured out I could test fasting insulin was elevated. Mine was 10.7, which is out of this optimal range. So if you get your fasting insulin tested, you want it to be between 2 and 6. The other thing you want to know about fasting insulin is that the conventional system will not flag you as out of range until it's over 24.9. That is way higher than it should be. So I'm proud to say my fasting insulin is now 2.2. I did a lot of work to reverse it, a lot of education, a lot of learning, a lot of different habits. But you can have normal blood sugar for a very long time. And that's the body trying to protect you, because those high levels of blood sugar and glucose are very detrimental to the body. So your body will keep pushing out insulin to bring those glucose levels down. So you can have elevated fasting insulin, oftentimes for years to decades before you see those elevated blood sugars. So by the time you have elevated blood sugars, you usually have some pretty severe insulin resistance. And so I talked about how there's some basic labs that might clue you in on fatty liver, but oftentimes what they're testing in the conventional system may not be enough. So they might look at those basic enzyme labs of ALT and AST. And again, that's not a definitive diagnosis for fatty liver. Those can be elevated or not elevated, and your liver can still be in rough shape. So some better labs are for those that are testing insulin resistance and overall metabolic health. So I just mentioned fasting insulin. Triglycerides, elevated triglycerides, telltale sign the liver is in trouble because it's pushing out too many fats. I'll talk about the HOMA-IR score in just a moment here. Elevated levels of ferritin, which is a storage form of iron, that can signal inflammation. This HSCRP is an inflammatory marker. And then I'll talk about the triglyceride to HDL ratio in just a moment as well. That is something that you can probably pull up a lipid panel right now and see if maybe your liver is in some trouble and you have some work to do metabolically. The only way to definitively test and say, yes, I have fatty liver for sure, is by getting a fibroscan, an ultrasound, or an MRI, because that's actually looking at the liver organ itself and seeing if there's fat accumulation around it. So you can't just rely on the normal labs. Oh, one other lab I skipped over was this GGT. That's actually a pretty important one. That's another liver enzyme that has to do with the metabolism of glutathione, which is metabolized and produced in the liver. But that one, if that one's elevated, that can be another pretty good sign that your liver is not as healthy as it should be. So these are the labs that you can actually have tested, see what degree your insulin resistance is at. And it's really great to get a baseline, especially if you're thinking about trying the products that we're going to be talking about here in a minute, because you can see how the products are changing your insulin resistance. So I would recommend getting a fasting insulin and fasting glucose. They're not the same. From there, the best we have to look at HOMA-IR right now, or insulin resistance severity, is called the HOMA-IR score. And if you have your insulin and glucose fasting, you can divide by 405. And that number should be less than 1.5. So I know that that's a lot, but that's a really great way to check your insulin resistance. You can look at your 3-month average of hemoglobin A1C. Kim said she brought hers down substantially on the system. Mine went from 5.5% to 5% in 5 months. I was so happy because I'm like, with all my lifestyle stuff, I was kind of crabby that it was it was what it was. So it's now 5%. I'm very happy about that. Another thing you can look at, you can pull up your lipids right now and look at your triglyceride to HDL ratio, because I remember I said when you have liver damage, oftentimes those triglycerides start to rise and the HDL starts to fall. And so if you take your triglyceride number, those are fats in your bloodstream, divide by HDL, that should be less than 1.5. If it's over 3, again, you have some work to do. GGT is that liver enzyme. That should be less than 20. And again, this might be different. The recommendations are different in the conventional system, but less than 20 is where you want that. We talked about that inflammatory marker, HSCRP. Under 3, I actually like to see it under 1 myself. That means like there's no inflammation going on in the body. And then waist circumference, because we have all that belly fat accumulation happening with fatty liver disease. Over a waist circumference over 35 inches for a female or over 40 inches for a male, that in and of itself is a metabolic disease marker, because that's just telling us that you're getting fat accumulation around those organs. And I would test these every 3 to 6 months or so just to see what your progress is at. And like I said, I brought my A1C down from 5.5% to 5%, and I've reduced my total cholesterol by 62 points. I was flabbergasted. So there's 4 stages. The thing that you want to know is that fatty liver is reversible if it hasn't gotten to the fibroid, the fibrosis and scarring. Once your liver has that scarring going on, that's really not reversible. That's where my mom was at, unfortunately, when I found out that she was feeling pretty crappy at that point too. Like she just did not feel good. But if it's in that fatty liver, or it's called NASH, if it's in those first couple of stages, you could completely reverse this and clear out the liver, which is very, very exciting and empowering. So how do we do this? We do it by doing the opposite of what got us insulin resistant and into this predicament in the first place. We stop eating so often. We bring down our carbohydrates, and we bring down the processed food that we're eating. We limit that fructose, especially high fructose corn syrup. You just get rid of that crappy food. You don't snack, don't graze, don't eat at night. I know that I'm just like dropping these things like they're so easy. They're not, but they once you understand why, the products that Trent's going to go over makes this so much easier. It makes it so much easier to intermittent fast, and it makes it so much easier to clear out the gut and clear out the liver. Movement after meals, because what that's going to do is help pull some of that glucose out of the bloodstream, so your body does not have to secrete as much insulin, so your insulin can start to fall. Morning light and circadian rhythm, for the reasons I said before, so we can get cortisol high when it should be high, and we can have melatonin low when it should be low, and that just has to do with glucose metabolism. Very important. Earlier bedtimes, especially for kids. Get the screens out of your faces at night. If you are going to be on a screen, I recommend blue light blocking glasses so that you're not stimulating cortisol. And then we'll talk about the tea and fiber that has made such a difference for me and my community, and I wish that I knew about it sooner. But these are amazing, highly studied tools. Trent will go over them in more detail, but we have the tea and the fiber matrix. And these are so easy to put into our lifestyle. Just a couple of drinks that we add. They taste amazing. I'm completely addicted to them. I can't imagine my life without them anymore. And then the chlorogenic acid effect that we get from the yerba mate. And you might have heard, like, I didn't know much about chlorogenic acid before I started this system, but Unimate has 10 times the amount of chlorogenic acid that coffee does. So it's really a great natural liver cleanser and detoxification mechanism that is so helpful. And then if you are interested in more about like what I'm doing and content that I put out, I'm starting to kind of focus on fatty liver just because people are so confused about it. And and need more information on it, I'm Shana Hussin RDN on Instagram. Facebook, I'm Shana Hussin Wellness, and I do have a 90-day reset as well. So I thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you learned something about fatty liver. Know that it's reversible. It stems from insulin resistance, and you are empowered to make a difference and to reverse this disease state.
Shanna, I love this. And guys, if we have time here in a moment, we'll bring Shanna back on for some Q&A at the end. And so if you have a question for Shanna, I would love for you to be able to ask that to her. Shanna, if you don't mind, maybe just putting some of your socials in the chat over the next couple minutes here so that people can follow you. Obviously, we'd love to get more eyeballs on you and the great work that you do. And thank you for giving us, an hour of your time tonight and teaching us about fatty liver. Thank you. One of the things about fatty liver, you guys, that was really, really interesting to me. One of the things that was really, really interesting to me is that did you know that once you have some fat on your liver, your body has a very difficult time dealing with sugars and fats? So think about it this way. Have you ever noticed how kids can eat pretty much anything and they're fine? Like if I ate like my kids did, I would be in big, big trouble. One of the reasons why kids can often get away with it, although as Shanna said, it's catching up even with our youth now, is that kids have fresh livers. They have fresh, new, working livers. And you can do that for a little while, but once your liver gets a little bit of fat on it, everything changes. If you have a friend who you feel like you guys eat the exact same diet and your friend can eat whatever they want and they never gain a pound, and you look at that cheeseburger and you gain 3, right? There's a good chance that their liver is better at handling those things than your liver is. But the good news is that by fixing the liver, and Shanna gave us some great strategies for that, you can fix that problem, right? It gives you more leniency with your diet. And it also, I mean, it changes everything about your blood work and the way you feel. So I think one of the great things that she talked about was that the triglycerides, the high triglycerides is often a very early tell that something is wrong with the liver and we need to address it. So I want to talk just a little bit about the protocol that we have been following that is very, very good. So whether you have fatty liver or have another problem, I want to talk about how this protocol can help address it. So I'm going to be sharing my screen here briefly. And I had prepared something on the liver as well. That was the best presentation on fatty liver. I mean, it was just incredible. And so I don't think I have anything to add that I could add to that. That was just incredible. We talked though about, and Shanna talked so beautifully about this insulin resistance at the heart of a lot of these problems. We talked about obesity. We talked a lot about fatty liver, right? We have all these problems that stem from the same root cause. Okay. Now do me a favor. If you or somebody in your family has one of these problems, would you put the name of the problem in the chat? I want to see what you feel like they're struggling with or what your family, your people, your loved ones are struggling with. Okay, this is cool. Cancer, fatty liver, migraine headaches, obesity, diabetes, too many. Somebody said there's too many to write, right? Okay, look at this. Look at this. Crohn's disease. We get a lot of people with Crohn's that go on this protocol and they love it. Diabetes, obesity, a lot of the gut health related issues also this protocol can be great for. Neuropathy, says somebody. Neuropathy. Another person says high blood pressure. Perpetua Lobo says, what about Crohn's? Yeah, this we could talk about that. High cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, acid reflux. Okay, what if there was a solution to these problems? What if it was out there, it had been studied, it was patented, and you just didn't know about it yet? What would you do if you knew about a solution like that, right? I'll tell you what I would have done if I had a solution to these problems is I would have saved this guy right here. Shanna talked about her mom. This is my dad. And my dad had multiple problems, obesity, prediabetes, fatty liver, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, right? And eventually, cancer is what killed my wonderful dad. If we could have addressed this problem, my dad would still be alive today. So this is who I would save. And we do these calls uh, because we want to educate people, but also we want to make you aware that there are solutions, natural solutions that nobody is really talking about yet. Okay. And so there is a solution that is absolutely incredible. There, it's patented, nobody can copy it. I believe it's going to change healthcare. Okay. This is something that has been studied at a lot of the leading institutions. The Cleveland Clinic, the number one heart hospital in the world, has looked at this. I'll even share with you what they said, right? It is safe and natural, and natural meaning there are no drugs in it. It is a nutraceutical, not a pharmaceutical. And it is so effective that it's actually guaranteed to work. If you use it properly and are consistent, it will work for you. This is something that is cost neutral, meaning it saves as much as it costs or more, meaning that disadvantaged people can afford it, right? A solution to some of the most devastating health problems in the world that is affordable and natural. You would think that everybody would be talking about it. But of course, that's not the way our world works today, is it? So, what is this solution? This is something that I've been using now for more than 3 years, coming up on 3.5 years right now. Okay. It is very simple. Shanna teased it a little bit, but one of them is something you sip whenever you are fasting. So, whenever, oops, not spelling words right today. So, one, you sip when fasting. The other is something you have just before eating. What are they? The one you sip when you're fasting is a concentrated extract of the yerba mate plant. This yerba mate plant naturally raises GLP-1 levels. It makes me forget about food. It makes it very easy to take breaks from food and bring down insulin levels. My body is burning body fat for fuel during that fasted state. But the Unimate makes me forget that I'm even fasting. The chlorogenic acid is an incredible tool for lowering inflammation and even getting rid of the inflammation that's on the liver, right? Now, before eating, this is a blend of plant fiber. This is a blend of fiber that blunts, it restricts or limits the impact of sugar on your body. It makes it easier for the liver to deal with it because it doesn't hit it as quickly. It slows the digestion of sugar and carbohydrates. It makes us feel fuller for longer. This often works as well as, in fact, it's the only natural, clinically proven, and patented alternative to statin drugs in the physician's desk reference. It often works as well as metformin, sometimes even better for controlling blood sugar, but with no drugs. All right. And everybody should know about this stuff. This is what a day in the life looks like for me. If this is breakfast and lunch and dinner, I will skip a meal each day. I'll skip breakfast because, this is a way for me to extend my overnight fast. I sip the Unimate and I skip breakfast altogether. I take the money, the 5, 10 bucks I would have spent having breakfast somewhere, I keep that in my pocket, right? I sip the Unimate and burn fat for fuel during breakfast. Sometimes I'll have another Unimate later in the day because I'm a bit of an afternoon snacker. In fact, here's my second Unimate of the day. And then before my largest meal each day, sometimes before every meal, but at least before my largest meal each day, I'll have a packet of this fiber. It is that simple. One when you're not eating, one just before eating. Oh, and by the way, the cost of the protocol is just $5 per day. So it is cost neutral because you save at least $5 when you skip a meal, right? Now, if you're a skeptic, if you say, well, I've seen a lot of supplements, this sounds like some supplement, right? This is not just another supplement. If you're a skeptic or if your doctor's a skeptic, right? Your doctor can actually look this up right now in the physician's desk reference. They can look it up in their book. In fact, this is now HSA qualified and FSA qualified. If you're a medical professional on the call, would you write medical in the chat for me? I mean, I want people to see, especially all the newcomers, to see how many doctors, nurses, nutritionists, diabetes educators, people that work in the medical profession, around the medical profession, are a part of this movement. Because most doctors that I know believe in minimum necessary medication. And if there's a way that is in the PDR that is legitimate and studied and tried and tested and proven to help patients do it naturally, most doctors I know are all about that, right? So you can look it up. Your doctor can see this is what the number one heart hospital in the world said about it. They said this product, if taken regularly, could reduce such a product, if taken regularly, could reduce cardiovascular risk on a population basis and potentially decrease the need and or dose for lipid lowering prescription drugs. Those three words, decrease prescription drugs. In my opinion, that is why nobody's talking about it. This protocol can be part of the unpharmification of the United States and eventually the world. Your doctor can look up all the clinical studies, how it lowers blood sugar, how it lowers insulin. They can look up what it does for GLP-1. And I could talk about this ad nauseum. This is a buddy of mine, a friend of 20 years. I've known Cody for over 20 years. This 6 months on the protocol changed his whole life, right? And for all of those that are new, we're going to do something for you here that's pretty cool. Before we open it up for Q&A, let's just do something pretty cool, okay? So for everybody that's not new, if you're a repeater, if you've been on this for a week or a month or a year, if you've been living this protocol, and if you have noticed a measurable positive improvement, now I don't want you to exaggerate, okay? Just the truth is enough. If you've noticed something in your own life that is measurable, would you put a sentence or two in the chat? I would love to read a few of these before we go to our Q&A, okay? I want you to think as you're reading these, if you're new here, what if this could do for you what it's doing for others? What if this was the thing that finally solved your problem once and for all, right? What else would happen if you were able to take control of your health and get your life back, right? And get maybe perhaps off some of the medication, or maybe perhaps out of the situation that you're in, right? Like so many have. And why not try something that is guaranteed to work that you can try for 90 days? And if you're not totally satisfied, just get a refund. What do you have to lose, right? Why not? So I want to read some of these, okay? And then I won't have time to read them all, but I hope you see what this is capable of doing. And I'll go to the chat here. Holy cow, this is going fast. Steven Sackett says, I've been doing this wrong for 3 weeks and I've still lost 10 pounds. Okay, that's amazing, Steve. Um, I have lost 10 pounds so far, says Simone Johnson. And in a moment, I'll show you how to order it. You don't want to go through Amazon or anything like that. It is a fortune. It's like $235 a month plus on Amazon. Or if you try to buy, anybody that invited you to this call has a discount link. Just say, send me the link, and they'll give you a discount link that will give you $75 off, and you'll lock in that same price on all future orders. And once you order through the discount link, you will have your own discount link that you can send to friends and family. And when they use it, they'll get the same price, and you'll get a credit each month on your account, making your product cheaper and cheaper. It's a pay it forward kind of referral program that is awesome. So whoever invited you to the call, just say, send me the link, and they can send it to you and get the info. Okay, Simone Johnson, I've lost 10 pounds so far. Jimmy Elizondo, what's up, Jimmy, my man? Jimmy says, I've reversed my non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and type 2 diabetes. My blood pressure's down, my sleep apnea, depression, and erectile dysfunction are gone, down 88 pounds off 8 medications, all without a thyroid. Shannon Davis, RD, says, triglycerides went from 250 down to 50, and my HDL went up from 53 to 122. Incredible. Paul Thorup, an old friend of mine. What's up, Paul? Been in the Feel Great System protocol for over 1 year now. I'm down over 30 pounds. I've dropped 5 pant sizes. I've reversed my insulin resistance and eliminated high blood pressure. My constant headaches are gone. Happy for you, brother. Jamie Ortiz, migraines gone, inflammation gone. Brian Henderson says, I'm on day 27. What's up, Brian? Troy, after donating a kidney 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney disease. 7 years later, after getting on this protocol, I have reversed my stage 4 kidney disease. I've lost 23 pounds. Migraine headaches that I had for 23 years, stemming from a bicycle accident, are gone. Brain fog, anxiety, depression, sleep apnea, acid reflux, all gone. Diane Weaver says, no more inflammation, no more acid reflux, no more leaky gut. Blood pressure's normal. Finally sleeping. My husband's lost 40 pounds in 3.5 months. My husband's off acid reflux meds and statins. My mom reversed type 2 diabetes and off statin medications. This keeps going. I'm not going to read all. That is incredible. Barbara Outlaw, about Barbara Outlaw Bynes says, I've lost 50 pounds, decreased my A1C, more energy, no more brain fog. Denise, 20 pounds, no longer pre-diabetic, no more endometriosis symptoms, no more achy joints. Renee Laeli says, I've reversed my diabetes after taking 8 medications for 23 years. There are 51 additional comments that I unfortunately do not have time to read because we have to wrap up and we've got a little Q&A here. What are you waiting for? If you have not tried this protocol, whoever invited you, just say, send me the link. They'll send you the link. You can try it risk-free for 90 days. There is an incredible app that will help you and coach you as you go through it. We've got an incredible support group, a community called the Feel Great Family with thousands of other people in there that are all on the protocol. You'll have support. You'll have coaching. You'll have weekly calls like this. You'll just use it properly, be consistent. And if you don't feel better and look better than you have in years, get a refund, right? What do you have to lose? So, okay, real fast, I want to bring Shana back because Shana, I am going to take advantage of this great time we have with somebody so awesome as you are. And there may be a question or two. Now, guys, we have 5 minutes for questions. Shana's an RD. She is not a doctor. She's not your doctor. And there may be things that she cannot answer. But if there are things that she can answer, we want to hear some of this. Brianne Hall lost 60 pounds. No more migraines, acid reflux gone, sleep apnea gone, depression and anxiety gone, feel amazing. Okay, this is awesome. Let's see if there are any questions. One question, Shana, somebody's asking, I've just started the protocol. I'm struggling with my gut. I'm struggling with constipation. Anything you'd recommend? And if not, I can handle that one. But anything you'd say to somebody that's struggling with some constipation as they're adjusting to the protocol?
I had some gastro symptoms when I started the protocol. I actually had some bloating, and this can be really common, swing either way, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, very common because your microbiome's just not used to all the fiber that's coming in. There's 7 different types of fiber in the balance. So oftentimes just going down to like half a packet for a day is helpful. I will admit, I almost gave up on the protocol. I was like, I can't tolerate this bloating, but I waited it out, and after a month, everything was good. And I've struggled with bloating and distension for like 20 years. And I just didn't have the bacteria in my gut to be able to digest all those things and heal I probably had some leaky gut. I'd done so many protocols. I'd, taken tons of different foods out of my diet. I really clean. I was gluten-free. But just if you can do like a half a pack and get used to that. Bowel changes are very common. I don't know if you have anything to add. A lot of make sure you're hydrated, drinking enough water. A lot of times when you add fiber in, it adds bulk to your stool. So you have to make sure that you have electrolytes and water, enough water to make sure you're passing your stool properly.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, there's a little bit of an adjustment period, but you'll get through it if you experience that. Most people don't experience much of that, but some do from time to time. And so just, good salt, water, excellent. A person asked this, is there a special diet other than no sugar? And we do have a nice feel great food guide that if you want some, foods to enjoy, foods to eat in moderation, and maybe some foods to avoid, there's a great guide for that. However, most of the people that are doing this are not on any kind of a special diet. They're not counting calories. They're not on an elimination diet. They're eating regular meals. They're having the balance just before their meals, and then they're skipping a meal each day and doing the unamate during that fast, right? And so now, of course, if you eat with this instead of against it, your results will be progressively better, right? And so minimize processed food is typically what I hear. Anything you'd add to that, Shanna?
No, there's not any one definitive diet that I recommend everybody. Some people do really well on some things and not so well. Clean whole food, protein centric, getting fiber, the balance helps a lot with that. Getting healthy fast, but yeah, just eating real food and only eating a couple times a day. One thing I would add is if you like take it to another level is like to eat locally and seasonally, just to eat the foods that are naturally in your environment would be even better, but do the best you can.
Thank you. A question from Suzanne Foote. Does a big hard belly indicate fatty liver?
It can. Again, the only definitive diagnosis is to get a scan or an ultrasound, but that buildup of fat around the organs, oftentimes we see kind of that protruding belly, a lot of belly fat accumulating in that area. But I'm not going to say definitively yes, like that's definitely fatty liver, but it is definitely a symptom and a sign of it.
So, in terms of insulin resistance, guys, there are some signs of very, very advanced insulin resistance. Okay. So, these skin tags around the neck, face, armpits, groin area, that is a sign of very high insulin levels, extremely high insulin levels. This darker pigmentation that you get in folds of skin, maybe on the elbows, again, armpits, around the neck, that's very advanced insulin resistance in most cases. And then this protruding hard belly, which is what we're talking about, is a very, very, I mean, this is the number one risk factor for insulin resistance. But as Shanna said, this sometimes you can see a physical fatty liver. Most of the time, it goes undetected. Most of the people who have fatty liver have no idea that they have it. They're struggling. They're not getting the results they want with their diet. They have constant cravings. They have an inability to lose weight, and they're wondering why. And it's because of the fat on their liver. So that is why we invited the great Shana Hussin here to talk about fatty liver. Thank you, Shanna. If you could put one more time in the chat, your handle, I think people would love, love, love to reach out to you and connect with you. Thank you, Shanna, for your contribution on the call. We have to wrap up the call now. Thank you, Kim Jackson, for your story. Thank you to all of you in the chat. You guys are amazing. I love all the repeaters that are here again and again. Thank you all for making these calls what they are. And somebody you love is struggling with their metabolic health, invite them to this call next week. Same link, and they will thank